Hey V's, I'm Marie from Humblebee and Me with new shorter hair, and welcome to the first Q&A video of 2019. So just a reminder, if you have a question that you'd like to see answered in one of these videos, please leave it in the comments below or watch for the monthly post I make on the Humblebee and Me Facebook page asking for questions for these videos. But come on, let's dive in. Our first question is from Carrie, and it's about the new Marie Kondo show on Netflix, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. So Carrie asks, my question, since it's a hot topic now, have you binge watched the new Netflix series Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, and have you continued to use her techniques since your initial purge? And has her book changed how you purchase items for crafting and within your day-to-day life? It's pretty cool to see her being talked about all over social media. So yes, I totally have binge watched the series and I really enjoyed it. I really like how gentle her method is and how it's really all about what brings joy to each of sort of the individual families and clients that she was working with. She's not Gordon Ramsay going around browbeating people into getting rid of their things. It's just a simple, does this bring joy to you? Is this something that you want to bring into your future? And so I really like that, and I really enjoyed watching this show. The before and afters were definitely very satisfying and also very encouraging and inspiring. For those of you who don't know, I moved last year, and as part of that moving process, I really worked at going through my belongings, since of course I was going to have to do that anyways in order to pack them, and getting rid of a lot of them because I have too much stuff. I actually made a couple videos last year called Things I'm Learning as I Purge. I'll link to them in the description box below, and I think I might be due for another one. But even though, of course, I did move, I do feel like I didn't quite finish the process. And a large part of that is just because at some point in time I did have to move. I did have to get everything out of my old place and into my new place. And so we reached a point of like, all right, well, just that's going in a box and out the door and I'll deal with it later. And so I don't feel like I've completely finished purging, even though I am now in my new home with significantly fewer possessions. As I'm sitting here looking around, I can definitely, see room for improvement. And so watching Marie's show definitely gave me a bit of a kick in the pants, and I have resumed thinning the herd and the runs to charity shops to drop things off and donate them. Something that did really stick from the first time I read her book, though, was the philosophy about sort of bringing things in your life. Does this new thing bring me joy? Is it going to, serve a good purpose and enrich my life? Is it something that I want in my home? And so I find that I have been purchasing significantly fewer things. I've never been a huge shopper, but sometimes, if you find a really good deal on something, you can do the whole, even though this isn't super amazing, it sure is well priced for what it is kind of rationale. And I got rid of a lot of things like that. So it really sort of drove home for me that way of making purchasing decisions is not a great one. As much as Marie's methods have helped me refine and reduce the amount of things that I bring into my home, I'm not sure that's really carried over to my studio very effectively. Now, one can definitely argue that having so many wonderful ingredients at my fingertips brings me a lot of joy, so I don't necessarily think I need to be getting rid of a lot of my ingredients, but I do think my studio is more cluttered than I would like. So there's room for improvement there. One of the things I am doing is I am purchasing things in smaller amounts, because something that definitely does not bring me joy is throwing out expired or rancid ingredients because I bought them in significantly larger quantities than I, as a single human being, could ever use. Something else I've gotten better at doing is letting go of my creations from the get-go, in the sense of, if I've made a batch of something, the chances that I personally will finish the full batch of everything I make is it's lower than zero. I have proven time and time again that I am not capable of using that many skincare products. I do not have enough skin for all the skincare products I make. So I am now getting much better at keeping a small amount of something for myself and letting the rest go, gifting it to friends and family, and getting it out there so that the product can be used and enjoyed, doing right by my creations so that they can have the life I designed them to have and created them to have, rather than collecting collecting dust on a shelf somewhere until I find it, look at the date, have a, oh my goodness, this is how old moment, and then unfortunately I have to dispose of it. So generally regarding Marie Kondo, I really enjoyed the show. I continue to really enjoy her method of deciding if something is worth, continuing to have in your life and bringing into your future. And I am continuing to work at that in my own life and refine. And I think you can probably expect another part of the things I'm learning as I purge video series sometimes in the coming weeks or months. I had a couple questions about post-production software. So Brenda wanted to know what I use for my photos, and Stephanie wanted to know what I use for my videos. So I tend to use the Adobe Creative Suite for everything. So for photos, I mostly use Lightroom, a little bit of Photoshop. I used to use more Photoshop in the past, but I've started using Lightroom because it's much easier to bulk process my photos. As you can probably imagine, I shoot things in the same, at the same time. So I can typically apply the same filters or the same adjustments to all the photographs at once, and it's much easier to do that in Lightroom and then to export them for things like use on my website, use on Instagram, use in print for the Humblebee and Me Patreon monthly collection, those sorts of things. So yeah, mostly Lightroom, a little bit of Photoshop for photos. I use Photoshop more so for graphic assets. So the sort of large Pinterest style tall asset you see at the beginning of my blog posts, that's from, I make that in Photoshop. The thumbnails for these videos, email headers, that sort of thing, I make all of that in Photoshop after I've edited the picture and corrected the lighting and whatnot in Lightroom. I use Adobe Premiere Pro to edit my videos. I haven't really experimented with a lot of other video editors. I've actually been using Adobe Premiere since I was in junior high, so I've been using it for a good long time. I'm sort of on and off, a lot more on now that I have a YouTube channel, obviously. But yeah, those are the softwares that I use. I like the Adobe Suite. Again, I used it all throughout university as well when I was getting my degree for graphic design. So I'm just very comfortable in the Adobe Suite and I like it a lot. It's very powerful and there are so many tutorials on the internet for it, which is always great. If you're trying to figure something out, chances are somebody has already figured it out and made a great YouTube tutorial about it. Noelle had a question about recipes that include carrier oils or butters that have a scent that then contribute to the scent of the end product. Basically, how do you take that recipe that kind of has the scent really baked into it and make an unscented version? So I recently did a sugar plum series for last year's Christmas making season, and it included plum oil, which is quite fragrant, as part of the recipes, and it also contributed to the scent of the final product. So, how do you get that out of there? It's very simple. You replace it with a oil or butter that doesn't have a scent. So in the case of plum oil, something like sweet almond oil would be a good alternative, but you could also just look at the recipe and sort of say, all right, what other liquid oils are in here? And if there's another one that's reasonably similar, something that doesn't have a really, really long, slow absorption speed. I wouldn't necessarily top it up with more castor oil, but if it was jojoba or camellia seed or safflower, sunflower oil, or apricot kernel, any of those sort of similar absorption speed oils, yeah, just replace it one for one. Thing that smells like something, thing that doesn't smell like something, that's it. For something like a brittle butter, like cocoa butter, you would want to be replacing that with a different brittle butter. So you could just use deodorized cocoa butter, or something like Takuma butter is also similarly brittle. So yeah, you do want to be replacing it. Don't just remove it from the recipe, but replace it with something that doesn't smell like something, and that's about that. You want it to be reasonably similar. I have an entire blog post on carrier oil substitutions, which I'll link to in the description box below. And then also make sure you're looking up these ingredients on the Humblebee and Me encyclopedia. I always have a section on alternatives and substitutions suggestions in there, and that can also be a great place to start. I've been getting a few questions that are more or less, do you have a recipe for X? And if not, could you do that? The best way to find out if I have a recipe for something is to go to my blog, humblebeeandme.com, and search for it. If you're on desktop, there's a search icon right in the main menu. You just click on that sucker and boom, search bar. And if you're on mobile, there's one right on the homepage. You can also go to humblebeeandme.com/search. And yeah, just search for it. That will be the fastest way to find out if I have done a recipe for something. I have way more content on my blog than I do here on YouTube. So yeah, you do want to do the search on the blog because I have at this time well over 1,000 posts on the blog, but only about 200-ish videos here on YouTube. I've also been working really hard at the categorization of all of the posts on the website. So if you use the main menu under the recipes drop down, you'll find tons of different categories, and you can click into those categories and then explore all the different recipes that I have in that category. If I don't have a recipe for the thing that you are looking for, you can submit a recipe request. So I made a request a recipe form, and I'll link to it in the description box below, and so you can fill that out and send it to me if you have an idea for something that you think would make a good blog post, a good DIY. So these are just requests. This isn't an order. There's no guarantee I'm going to do it, and there's no guarantee that it will be anytime soon if I do it. But yeah, if there's something that you'd love to see on Humblebee and Me, please, yeah, send in a recipe request, and I'd love to take a look at it. I also get lots of questions about substitutions all the time, and there are 2 great places that you can check to learn more about how to substitute an ingredient you might not be able to get. If you're looking for more general information about an ingredient, make sure to check out the Humblebee and Me encyclopedia. So I have tons of entries about tons of different ingredients that I use there, and you can learn things like what the ingredient looks like, what it smells like, its solubility, its melting point, where to buy it, why we use it, what it does, and how to substitute it out. If you're looking for substitutions for a particular recipe, please check it out on my blog. So I link to all of my recipes. If you go down to the description box below the video, you can click through to find the recipe on my blog, or you can just search for the title of the recipe on humblebeeandme.com, and you'll find the written recipe. And at the end of every recipe for the last more than a year now, I've been doing a bulleted list of substitutions that are specific for that recipe. So substitutions within the context of the product that we are making. And so I really do try to anticipate any type of substitution questions I'll get. And so sometimes it just says, don't substitute X ingredient, because I know somebody's going to ask. So yeah, that's also a great place to check if you're looking at a recipe and don't have something and are wondering what you might be able to use instead. Okay, well that is it for this month, this January 2019 Q&A. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and remember to check out the description box below this video for some helpful links that are, pertinent to the things that we chatted about today. But thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.